All right, let's dive right in. Today we're jumping into a fascinating philosophical debate, one that puts a core idea of Buddhism directly under the microscope, the whole concept of suffering. We're going to be looking at a text by a writer named Zhu Feng, who offers a pretty bold, and you might even say radical, way of rethinking what it all means.
So let's get straight to the heart of it with the one question that drives this whole conversation. Is life, at its core, fundamentally about suffering? Now, this is famously the starting point for Buddhism, but as you're about to see, our source material is going to come back with a very, very different answer.
Okay, so first, a quick refresher on the traditional framework we're challenging here. In Buddhist philosophy, you've got the three poisons, that's greed, anger, and ignorance, and they're seen as the internal drivers of all our unhappiness. Then these lead to the 8 sufferings, which pretty much cover the whole human experience, from birth to old age to just not getting what you want. This is the very foundation that our source text is setting out to dismantle. And here's the big what if. This is the core argument from the author Zhu Feng. What if Buddhism just got the diagnosis wrong? What if these things we call poisons and sufferings aren't actually flaws to be eliminated? What if they're actually essential, even vital parts of a full and meaningful life? It's a huge shift in perspective.
So, how does this critique even begin? Well, the argument kicks off by completely reframing those so-called 3 poisons.
Let's start with greed. The source basically flips the script on this one. It says desire isn't a poison at all. It's the engine that drives us forward. Think about it. The desire for food keeps us from starving. The desire for knowledge, that's what fuels science and discovery. The text even says that wanting to live to be 100 is a kind of greed, but it's one that pushes us to be healthy. It's really our aspiration for a better life.
Okay, next up, anger. Instead of seeing it as this destructive force, this viewpoint sees it as a protective shield. It's our mind and body's natural defense system. When someone steps over a line or violates our dignity, anger is that healthy, powerful response that just says, nope. It's how we set boundaries. The source suggests that if you don't feel anger when faced with injustice, you're not enlightened, you're just numb. And this brings us to the final poison. And this one's a real mind-bender. What Buddhism might call ignorance or obsession, this text calls the mark of a genius. I mean, think about the greatest artists, the most brilliant scientists. Weren't they all completely and totally obsessed with their work? From this point of view, this poison is actually the passion and the deep, focused dedication you need to create something amazing.
All right, so if those internal poisons can be seen in a whole new light, what about the 8 sufferings, all those external things that are supposed to define our lives? Well, the critique takes them on next.
I love this quote from the text because it just perfectly captures the spirit of the whole argument. It's a direct challenge, and this question, who says, gets asked again and again for each of the so-called sufferings, basically forcing us to stop and really think about whether we agree.
So the text just goes right down the list, reimagining the entire life cycle. Birth isn't suffering. Come on, it's this incredible moment of joy for a family. Old age isn't some terrible decline. It's a time of happiness surrounded by kids and grandkids. Sickness isn't just pain, it's an absolutely essential signal from your body telling you to slow down and heal. And death? It's not presented as this horrifying end, but as a peaceful, natural return, like a leaf falling from a tree in autumn.
And that brings up another really powerful question. What about all the psychological stuff? The constant striving, saying goodbye to people we love, the simple fact that we feel things so deeply. Are these experiences really a burden that we should be trying to escape from? And from this point of view, the answer is a huge no. The so-called suffering of not getting what you want, that's actually the striving that gives life its flavor and meaning. Separating from people you love isn't some cosmic tragedy, it's a natural rhythm of life. And the 5 aggregates, which is really just a fancy term for our senses, our feelings, our thoughts, they aren't the cause of pain. They're the very tools we have to experience the incredible richness of the world.
So if none of that is the real problem, then what in the world is true suffering? The text doesn't just tear down the old ideas, it actually builds up a new and powerful definition of its own.
Here we go. According to Zhu Feng, true suffering isn't getting old or wanting things, it's being trapped. It's living in a cage, stuck in rigid routines and unchanging patterns. True suffering is the loss of freedom. It's that feeling of being completely constrained, stuck in a monotonous loop where nothing ever changes and nothing ever grows. And that really brings us to the ultimate point of this whole philosophy. Happiness isn't some empty, peaceful state you get by getting rid of all your desires. No. Instead, happiness is an active, dynamic thing. It's found in the presence of freedom, the constant embrace of change, and the endless opportunity to develop and grow as a person.
So we'll leave you with this to think about. We've looked at the traditional Buddhist framework, and then we've looked at a really powerful critique that turns it completely on its head. After hearing both sides of this debate, the question really comes back to you. What does suffering actually mean to you? And on the flip side, what does it mean to live a genuinely happy life?